Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there, Shane Craddock here, and welcome to today's podcast. I hope wherever you are in the world, you're well and that you're in good health. Today, I'm going to talk about a trap, the trap of dependency, and it was inspired by my colleague, Joseph Jaworski. If you don't know Joseph, I interviewed him. I can't remember what episode number, but it's about, June of 2022 or so. Really fascinating guy, spent pretty much his entire lifetime pioneering leadership development in very interesting ways, set up the American Leadership Forum, he worked with companies like Shell at helping them to change their strategic planning, and other companies beyond. MIT have been inspired by him. People like Peter Senge, who was a pioneer in leadership, was very inspired by Joseph, and vice versa. And Joseph is the pioneer of what's called the U process. We're checking out. Now, I'm very lucky insofar as that over the last few months, the last couple of years, I got to know Joseph, but I was asked to co-host a program with him and his CEO, Susan Taylor, two great people. And the program is called Source Enabled Leadership. I'm not going to get distracted by it here, right? But the context is helping people to lead from a deeper place within themselves, that would have a connection to your intuition, to more clarity and intelligence in an age where there's less predictability and more uncertainty. And so this, I'm delighted to be able to do it, but also it's allowed me to kind of get in closer, I guess, to how Joseph sees the world, even asking questions myself, and then also help people to kind of to lead in a different way, a better way. Anyway, there's three traps: the trap of responsibility, the trap of overactivity, and the trap of dependency. And Joseph would call those the three traps that actually block you tapping into this deeper level of intelligence that he would see as a higher level of intelligence. And that's what I want to explore a little bit today, the trap of dependency. The other two, maybe we'll explore in a different podcast or podcasts over the next few weeks. We'll see. So dependency, from my perspective anyway, is a major thinking trap that we can fall into, and more people than you might think can fall into this trap. It's very common. Now, most people, when you talk about it, will go, yeah, I agree with you, it makes total sense, but that's not me. And like most things, you should never really look to what somebody says to you. Always look at your behavior, look at their behavior, especially if you're a leader. People will say things believing what they say, not even lying. But if you look at their behavior, it's not always consistent with what they're saying. So, for example, you could have dependency on a person. It could be a parent, it could be a leader, it could be somebody in your life, an authority figure that you are looking for approval from them, very often unconsciously. It could be dependency on a group. That's very often how cults form and how they exist. There's a dependency on a group. You could have a dependency on a system or even an approach. I can relate to all the ones I've said so far, by the way. I probably, it's not uncommon. You could have a dependency on conditions, as in things have to be a certain way, or my circumstance have to be a certain way before I allow myself to feel X or to do X. You could have a dependency on your mood. Oh, if my mood's off, then I'm not going to take action. Why? Your mood should have nothing to do with your action. You could even have a dependency on the weather. Oh, if it's not sunny, then I'm not going to feel good. And a lot of people, particularly in the winter, can get depressed. Now, there could be people who argue there's medical reasons for that. And fair enough, I can totally get that. But there's also a dependency factor. And certainly what I've learned on my own journey in my life to date is that the trap of dependency is a recipe for unhappiness, and it's also a recipe for poor performance. Now, when I say performance, I mean just getting the best out of yourself in any context. Now, even dependency on other people's moods And that's something I could relate to, that if somebody, in my family or my core relationship, if the mood was off, that might affect me. Why? Like, why? So have you ever asked why? It's possible for somebody else to have a mood that's off, that's close to you, and just not be affected by it. And some people will be listening to this thinking, yeah, well, sure, that makes total sense to me because you're not affected by people's moods. But other people will be listening to this kind of going, really? Actually, no, okay, maybe fair point. If somebody says, well, hang on, like, you're supposed to make me happy by doing what I want, that's a dependency as well. But that's not a healthy perspective. A lot of people, more than you might think, might have a version of that. You're supposed to do what I want, the way I want it. That could be in work or could be in a relationship. Not healthy. You could even have a dependency on new age thinking. So, the book and the documentary, The Secret, exploded onto the scene maybe 10, 12 years ago. Huge global phenomenon. And I mean, on the plus side, it probably opened people's minds to the possibility of using their thinking and their minds in different ways, in better ways, which is great. But a lot of people then would have had this kind of dependency. I need to think a certain way. If I don't think a certain way, then I'm not going to succeed. And that's absolute BS. And what I'm more concerned about there in that context is that it brings tension or a sense of failure into somebody's mind. Ridiculous. Yet, I've done versions of it myself over the years. And so I just feel very clear on this as being a major, major trap, and this has huge amount of angles on it. For me, I can think of several cases over the years where I would have been seeking approval without realizing it from authority figures or mentors. And the best people in those contexts would have rejected my approval seeking. But then there was few who took advantage of it. And looking back, that's poor character on their side, but it's also bad judgment on my side. And that's kind of where the inner work comes in. And even now for me, I can see it sometimes with people who approach me, and maybe they're putting me on a pedestal as, in their minds, an authority figure in this space, in leadership, the inner world, performance. And it's you can just see from my perspective, apparently on that pedestal, which I don't want to be on. You can see how it's easy to, if you wanted to take advantage. But it's not healthy for either person. It's not healthy for anybody. Yet a lot of people do this. They cultivate because they want to have people to be dependent on them. And again, that could be the head of a group, even the head of a business. I think that's even dangerous too. I've seen it in business or an organization where the leader is too dominant and they ultimately end up surrounded by dependent people. Yes, people is another way of saying the same thing. Like, yes, whatever you think, absolutely yes. But the problem is then you're not getting a good sense of perspective. Your quality of thinking is compromised in the business. And from my perspective, that is the start of decline. And in today's world, that is less and less predictable, more volatile, more uncertain, and it's going to get even more volatile and uncertain with the advent and acceleration of AI and other things with it, that the one thing we all need now is better quality thinking. And so it's worth thinking about this if you're a leader, thinking about it, really now reflecting on it. Like, where are you cultivating dependency? And perhaps also maybe where are you dependent? Now, some people are also dependent on their jobs, on their work. They don't feel that they are themselves unless their identity is tied up in their work. And that's also dangerous, because if anything happens to their work or their job or their business, something negative happens, well, then their identity is going to be damaged, and then that'll affect your self-worth. As I heard the entrepreneur Keith Cunningham say before, a lot of people make their self-worth based on their net worth. And that's a mistake. That's a big mistake. Again, another form of dependency. Now, I am, just to be clear, not talking about having any sort of dependency on people. I guess I'm talking more about this is the Inner Edge podcast, and I'm taking a very specific inner angle on what I talk about. And so I'm talking about really dependency, really from the point of view of my self-worth, my self-esteem, trust in myself. Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think was the person who kind of maybe brought into the mainstream in leadership, the phrases, being independent and then being interdependent. I mean, we have to learn the journey of child into teen into adult is the journey of dependency into true independency. And then as we're working with people in collaboration in our work, our organizations, our careers, our families, we have the challenge of learning interdependency, where I allow you to be you, I allow you to think and be on your own journey, but we have this interdependency where you respect that in me and I respect that in you, and that's probably the healthiest. But by God, most people don't live like that, not from what I can see. There are unconscious dependencies all over the place, which are unhealthy, and it just means that people are not necessarily growing. So when you're talking about something like personal growth, this is where it comes in. It's moving along that kind of journey from dependency to independency to interdependency. And all these phrases, when I first read even Stephen Covey's take on this, going back, 25 years ago, I could have sounded very smart to you by saying, oh yeah, here we go, independency, interdependency. But here's the truth. I wasn't living it because I didn't really understand what it meant. And also I hadn't done the inner work. I wasn't picking out the unconscious areas where I was dependent. And they eventually emerged with pain. Pain is generally where you will see, it's a hint that there's some dependency. The other thing that I would have seen with myself and with clients over the years is that dependency kills initiative. It kills risk-taking. It kills taking action on opportunities right in front of you. So if there's major procrastination going on and you're not taking any sort of kind of action around opportunities, you might want to look inside at a potential dependency, because the hints around it will be, or the symptoms will be, it'll kill your growth, it'll kill your confidence. So I guess the question then is, well, what's the solution, Shane? Well, I suppose, like everything that I'm talking about, I can give you techniques until the cows come home, but I'm most interested in the principles, the inner principles around what makes us tick, what makes us work. And when you see that and understand those, then you get natural, instinctive, automatic change. So I suppose the hint, like at the bottom of dependency, is pain. And that's generally rooted in a lack of self-reliance, a lack of trust, a genuine trust in yourself. And that's where inner work comes in. That's what I'm most interested in, is helping people to shine a light inside to say, hang on a second here, what am I thinking? Because your thinking will determine your behavior and your actions. But what am I thinking? Most of our thinking, for most people, is at the back of their minds. And so you need to tune into that, for starters. Some people can do that with a little bit of help. Some people need a lot more help. I was somebody who probably needed a lot of help, and it took time. But by God, was it worth the effort? Because then when you see the thinking that's perhaps dependent on other people, it's much easier then to drop it, bizarrely, with no technique. And then you start to become more independent. So, and then true independence, it allows us to take action rather than to be acted upon. And now you're talking from a real place of power. In Ireland, we might use the phrase, now you're sucking diesel. And before I give you some questions to consider, just something to let you know, if you've probably been tracking this podcast, you probably know I'm bringing out a new book in the autumn of 2023 called The Inner CEO. My previous book, which was called Inspire Me, which is based on my weekly emails, I've decided to kind of do a little giveaway for a few weeks. I'm going to give my book away for free. All you got to do is pay the shipping, no matter where you are in the world. And it's just to do with the physical copy of the book. It's just a little bit of an experiment and a bit of fun. If you haven't got the book, this is your chance to get it for free. Or perhaps even if you have it, maybe you could gift it to somebody else in your world. So who are you dependent on? Challenge yourself here now. Don't automatically say, well, I'm not dependent on anybody. I'm an adult and I'm capable. I would challenge that. And then I'd also ask, what are you dependent on? Maybe you're dependent on your identity, on money, on success, on image, on conditions and circumstances. What are you dependent on? And maybe think about it over the next week as an exercise. Maybe journal at the end of each day about it. Like, where am I dependent? Where might I be dependent? Again, because when you see the inner thoughts that are connected to this area, it allows you then to let go of them, because without realizing, we're often holding on to these limiting, trapping thoughts. So independent thinking is definitely one of the most valuable traits, and dependent thinking is a huge, huge and often unseen trap. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.